Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting issue, some common misconceptions about Jesus. We'll start off simple and then we'll work our way to some more questionable issues. So to begin with, there's the issue of whether or not Jesus had any brothers or sisters. Most people seem to think that he did not have any, or he had one, James. Truth of the matter is, he had 4 brothers and at least 2 sisters. We really don't know if he had more than 2 sisters, because in Matthew it states that his sisters, but it doesn't number them. So that's pretty much the answer. 4 brothers and at least 2 sisters when it comes to siblings. Now, the second question or misconception that I'd like to cover is about Jesus being married. You've heard a lot about this related to Mary Magdalene, a lot of Gnostic texts. We'll discuss it. So there's something called the Gospel of Philip. And the Gospel of Philip states that Jesus kissed Mary Magdalene often on the ... It's conveniently, there's a hole in the original text. So if you actually look, when archaeologists find a lot of text, they're almost never in a perfect, complete form. It almost looks like someone's sort of put a lighter under certain areas and burned off just little holes in different regions. And it's very unfortunate for scholars, because what could be more important than that next word or words? Most people translate it and just put Jesus kissed her often on the mouth, but we really don't know what it says. That's still not proof that he was married or that he was married to Mary Magdalene, although it should be noted that virtually all men are married during this time. To be 30 years old and not married back 2,000 years ago was unheard of. It's very, very likely, actually, that Jesus was married. Now, I've sort of been blocking out the second part of the puzzle. Did he have any kids? That's even more difficult to answer. But what we can say is this: it's almost certain he did not have a son. Because if he had a son, his son would have been the head of the Church of Jerusalem. So he would have become like the bishop eventually, if you will, of Jerusalem. But there's no writings or records stating that he had a son, and we probably would have heard about it somewhere. Now, could he have had a daughter? Possibly, but odds are we would have heard about that as well. So to sum up this second misconception, he might have been married, and maybe it was to Mary Magdalene. Did he have kids? We'll never be able to know, but almost certainly he did not have a son. So the translation of all that is that Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code is unfortunately incorrect. But it's a great story, nevertheless. Now the last issue I want to cover today: did Jesus really die on the cross? Now, this is a touchy subject for a lot of believers. There are 3 main views on it. One is that Jesus did not die on the cross. It's called the swoon hypothesis. What really happened is that he passed out, and then his friends and followers took him down, and then hence when he was rising from the dead, he wasn't really rising from the dead, he was just unconscious, and then he regained consciousness. That's known as the swoon hypothesis. So it's one possibility. The orthodox position, of course, is that Jesus did die on the cross and he was resurrected, and then he did ascend eventually into heaven. That's another possibility. And now a third, which is very interesting because a lot of ancient people believe this third way of looking at it. Gnostic Christians stated that Jesus did not die on the cross. It was an illusion. People were suffering a hallucination. They were at the event. They make a distinction between Jesus the man and Christ. So for some Gnostic groups, Christ is a spiritual entity or being that comes down from the heavens, and at Jesus' baptism, united with the man Jesus. And at that point on, you could say Jesus Christ. And then at the crucifixion, the Christ component, this spiritual being, leaves Jesus the man. And that's why Jesus' last words are, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Because the Christ component is leaving, and he knows it, and he feels abandoned. So that's the Gnostic interpretation. So 3 different views on Jesus' death. So this is a very short list of some misconceptions about the life and death of Jesus. Without doubt, you could extend this almost indefinitely. Another interesting one that we might touch on later is whether or not Jesus was really Jewish. There's a lot of different competing viewpoints on that. So perhaps in a later series we'll cover that. But for today, that's all.